I'm Jonathan Hollander. I'm the artistic director, founder, and president of Battery Dance here in New York City. I'm in my studio right now. Normally this would be filled with dancers, choreographers, community groups, with the liveliness of dance. But of course, we're in the midst of the pandemic. The numbers are coming down here in New York City and New York State, but in other parts of the United States, the cases are rising. Please take all precautions, stay safe, and take care of yourselves and each other at the time that's unprecedented for all of us. When I was thinking about how to address this Coconut Theater, Chai Wai, and Rangmanch today, I thought I should share with you the fact that today is my birthday, and we're approaching the 45th birthday of Battery Dance itself. Here in New York City, Battery Dance started as a very small unit in the most southernmost part of Manhattan. That's why it's called the Battery. We were very much a community-spirited organization, and the reason why I founded the company was that I had been a musician, a dancer, an actor, a visual artist, but when I found dance, or rather dance found me, I realized that all of my passion for the arts could be contained in this envelope of dance. Of course, I had no idea the challenges that were ahead of me. I didn't really know about business. I had no idea about a strategic plan. I just knew that I felt a motivation, and I felt compelled to follow this path of dance. I think that this time that we're living through right now could be called an apocalypse for the performing arts, with theaters being closed, with dance studios and rehearsal halls being closed because of the need for social distancing and the danger of having gatherings together where people might infect each other. This is a time that's really testing all of us. And so I thought I should bring the topic to why the arts are necessary. I understand that there was some kind of a poll in one of the newspapers in India in which artists and art were considered at the very lowest end of importance in society. Well, all of us in the arts have to really face this challenge, because right now we have no idea when we can resume what was always thought of as normal for us. It's not normal for dancers to stay in their homes. It's not normal for actors to stay in their homes. We are social beings, and we thrive on the interaction amongst ourselves. You can't put on a play without having fellow actors, director, producer, lighting designer, costume designer, set designer, and most of all, the audience. It's about the interaction with an audience that we all thrive on, and which tests our resolve and tests our expressiveness and our ability to communicate through the arts, whether that's through dance, music, or, of course, theater. Right now in New York, we're looking at months and months. Broadway theaters will not open in the fall. The Metropolitan Opera, which is one of the largest cultural institutions in New York, has canceled its entire fall season, and it's questionable as to whether or not they will be able to begin again in January. Quite frankly, I went through 9/11. Battery Dance is located very close to the World Trade Center. So from these windows right here, I saw plumes of smoke, and I thought that I would never again in my life have to experience something so devastating. Well, the numbers of people who've died from COVID-19 makes 9/11 seem like a very small episode. Of course, it changed the world. And it also was a similar moment of what do we do as artists in a state of crisis? How do we confront, or how do we give to the public at a time like this? The echo that you hear in the studio is really a metaphor. It's a metaphor for the echo of absent bodies, absent people. But we have to come back. And I do want to congratulate Coconut Theater on finding this medium of bringing people together and of making the communication perhaps even more international and widespread than it would have been on an evening in the theater. On the other hand, there's no substitute for that communication I mentioned earlier. We as artists respond to audiences. We need that kind of breath. There's a film that was made about Battery Dance's work around the world with young people in traumatic situations. And there's a moment in the film where a very tragic episode is revealed. And I've been in theaters where I hear an intake of breath from the entire audience when they discover what happened. It's a documentary, so it's a true story, and people are confronted with something that creates a collective response. We as actors, we as people in the theater, we as dancers, we as musicians understand what that is, and we thrive on it. I'm having daily conversations with my dancers, with my board of directors, and what we did actually to respond to the pandemic and to the closing of our studios and theaters and our international tours and our programs in New York City public schools was to go online like Coconut Theater has done. We created Battery Dance TV. I don't take credit for this. This was a product of my team of young people, much younger than I, who put themselves to the task of creating a vehicle by which our arts organization could continue to engage its audience, could continue to give to the beneficiaries that we normally serve live, whether that be audiences or young people in schools or collaborations with international artists. So they created Battery Dance TV. On March 27th, we went live with a series of programs every single day, 7 days a week, 5 original programs, ranging from classes in dance technique to performances. Now, these performances are by dancers in their homes, in their kitchens, in their hallways, because that's where they have to practice their craft at this point. We cannot simply go into hibernation. We had to do something. And I know this vehicle right here, Chai Wai and Rangmash, is one example where an organization, a group of people have decided we can't stop. We have to continue with whatever means we have. I mean, theater artists and dancers understand that. We have danced on surfaces that one would consider undanceable. And I'm sure that Coconut Theater and many other theater artists who are on this call will understand exactly what I mean. You walk into a theater and you see conditions that are not exactly what you expected or what were agreed upon, but do you walk away? Do you say, we can't do this? I don't think ever in the history of 45 years of Battery Dance Company have we rejected an opportunity to perform. We simply have to adapt. And this is adaptation on a grand scale right now. I don't want this talk to be a downer. I want this talk to bring us together and to share the fact that artists in New York and London and Paris and Hungary and Poland and Uganda and Zambia and Malaysia, I've spoken to people, I've spoken to colleagues in all of these countries on my Sunday talks. I have a Dance Diplomacy with Jonathan interview with people around the world, sharing our stories, sharing what we're doing, sharing how we're coping with the current situation. And what I hear from everyone is that there's a resilience, and I expect that. I expect resilience, I expect pushback, I expect challenge coming from the arts community to say, no, you may put us on a poll on a newspaper that says that we're the most unimportant people in society. Well, we know different. We know that it's critically important to feed the migrant workers in India. We know that it's critically important to look out for one's neighbor. But we also know that it's critically important to feed the soul of our audience, our colleagues, the people that we interact with. One of my dancers, when coming back from a tour that had taken him to a very small country in southern Africa, where the participants in his program had maybe one meal a day, but they showed up for a dance workshop. And when he came back, he said, I learned more from them than they ever could have learned from me. And I think that this is a refrain that we hear often in the arts, that as theater artists, as dancers, as people in the arts, we never stop learning. We're always adapting, we're always learning, we're always enriching our art by the life experiences that we have had. I think many of you know from my background that I came to India as a teenager, and I lived in the home of Siddhartha Nirupama Mehta, Vasundhara, near Mahalakshmi in Mumbai. It was called Bombay at the time. It still is by many of my friends. And believe it or not, I was introduced to theater as a teenager in Bombay at the INT, the Indian National Theatre, because my Indian mother, my exchange family, Nirupama Mehta, was one of the group of people who founded the INT. Why did she do this after the colonial period ended, after independence? Why was it necessary to have a theater company? Nirupama and Siddharth were people who were very involved in society. They were very involved in sort of helping people who needed help. They supported an outpost in the villages with doctors who were friends of theirs. In fact, they took me there so that I could see rural India, not just downtown Bombay. And I realized that for them, theater, helping people, involved with society, involved with community, all of these aspects of life were critical. They couldn't do with one without the other. Similarly, I was born into a family where my mother, Joan Hollander, was a concert pianist, and my father was an attorney, a public service attorney for the US government, supporting small businesses and the consumer. So naturally, I had in my DNA the arts and serving society. And that's been a refrain, that's been something that has been a compelling force, duality in my life as an artist. And I've had the opportunity to continue the relationship with India. It's been one of the most inspiring relationships that I've ever had with the country, with the people, with the dance community in particular. I've found myself in the role of being an advocate for the arts in India, because as an outsider, I am able to talk with the perspective of somebody from New York. And I always felt that the arts of India were not properly presented here in the United States. So I got together a group of people and we created the Indo-American Arts Council, and this was about 22 years ago. India did not have proper representation in the arts in New York. And luckily, I found a partner in crime, Arun Shivdasani, who took this on and became the executive director and built a theater festival, a playwrights festival, a film festival, a dance festival, a literature festival, and visual arts exhibitions. Incredible person, incredible force of nature, and such a wonderful dedication. And I think that this kind of dedication, I know the Prithvi Theatre, I know that the Javeri sisters, they're people in India whom I've had the honor of knowing and who have given me the examples of passion, a lifelong passion for the arts. And I guess that's what drives me, and that is what allows me to overcome the challenges. Many people I know think that, oh, he's in New York, he's in the United States, they have everything. Look at his big, beautiful studio. Well, let me just share with you the fact that this big, beautiful studio is shared with over 300 or 400 dancers, choreographers, and community groups every year, normally. And so it's a shared experience, it's shared space that we've preserved right here in the heart of Manhattan for the arts. As real estate has overcome so many performing arts spaces, we've stayed true to our mission and kept this space open at low cost for rehearsals. People come in at 11 o'clock at night. People come in at 7 o'clock in the morning. I'm really telling the truth here. This is the kind of dedication that people have here and that, of course, exists in India in very powerful ways. One of the pivotal moments in my life and the life of Battery Dance was when we first stepped out onto the public space in Lower Manhattan. There were no theaters. There was no place, no formal place where we could interact with the public. So we did what was natural, which was to create a festival out of doors. And at first, for the first many years, it was a lunchtime, art in the workplace kind of activity. And we didn't really have proper sponsorship for this. We really didn't have anyone to be the grandfather for this festival. It was something that was self-started. And yet, the energy that came from that public audience, whether it be people who were working on the streets as vendors of cold drinks, or whether it was buttoned-up business people from the local area, the law firms, accounting firms, banks that populate Lower Manhattan, we were surrounded by an appreciative audience, and we realized people need art, people need a break, people need to detach themselves from the hustle bustle and nose to the grindstone in numbers, and think about humans and see humans, dancers, using something that people have used throughout the history of mankind, use their bodies to express emotion, themes, have live music, have theater. These things are essential to life. India, of all places, is a country that's unique in the world. I don't think that there's any other country that has the kind of vibrancy of the arts that India has. Whenever I have a chance to bring my dance company to India, or when I have the chance to bring Indian dancers or musicians to New York, I feel like it's a great thing I'm doing for the artists, it's a great thing I'm doing for the audiences, but it's a great thing I'm doing for myself because it refreshes me. It reminds me of the beauty of art. And let's talk a little bit about beauty. Beauty is forgotten in today's terminology. We want to be provoking. We want to be taking people out of their comfort zone. Of course, that's what theater does. That's what dance does. That's critical to remind people about the meaning of the arts and the meaning of their lives that we expose on stage. But at the same time, what are we doing for ourselves as artists? I think we're touching something very core when we perform. We're shedding all the artifice. In a way, it's interesting because it's art and we're taking on a part in a play or we're impersonating something in dance. But at the same time, we're finding our core, because if we're not honest, if we're not speaking from the heart, then the audience will know it and we will be a failure in terms of communicating. It's the authenticity of performance that I think we have to touch upon. And at a time like this, it's what we're missing. How do we have the opportunity to replicate that live experience online? Right now, I'm seeing the comments coming through. I'm seeing that there are people watching, and I so appreciate you're taking the time away from your daily lives, whatever that may be right now, to listen to me and to join me. And so I'm using my imagination to picture my audience, you, right now, and being grateful for the fact that you're giving me this opportunity. And again, to Coconut Theater and VJ and the team. When they approached me, we had a little bit of a conversation. Like they said, this is a theater, a series of theater sessions. And we talked about, well, I'm a man of the theater, but what I put on stage is dance, is choreography, is a visual experience. It's not about speech. And they said, well, we're all the same. We're all together in this performing art world. And so share with our audience what you can about your own experience and your own life. But at the same time, starting out today with the spontaneity of this talk, which of course I did not pre-script. I wanted to be spontaneous. I wanted to speak to you as somebody who decided that at 8:30 in the morning here in New York, that the first thing I wanted to do on my birthday was to speak to you and to relate to the audience and to speak about why for 45 years of my life I've dedicated myself to the arts. We all know that it's not in the search of fame and glory or money. There's something that is driving us. It's like an engine inside. As soon as we are halfway through one project, we are already dreaming about the next. And I want to say something about the work that we've done with young people, because this has been a driver since 2006 for me, when Battery Dance started a program called Dancing to Connect. Dancing to Connect was an experiment. Normally, if we worked in New York City public schools, which by the way have over 1 million students, and many of those schools do not have any arts programming. So we have been working in New York City public schools for decades, and most often we would do a 10-week residency or a half-year residency or something like that. So over time we would build some kind of understanding of the art of dance among our young participants. But in 2006 we had the opportunity to go to Cambodia and to go to Germany and to work in New York City public schools, but there's something in common about all these experiences, and that was that it was a very compressed period of time. We did not have 10 weeks. We did not have 6 weeks. We did not even have 2 weeks. We had 20 hours over 5 days to try to share something that had impact, something that had meaning, something that young people could relate to. And so it was this experiment that created something that we now call Dancing to Connect. And the basic model, the basic framework of this program is that we gave the tools of creativity to young people. They expected us, coming from New York, that they were going to learn the latest moves and that our dancers would stand in front of the room and that they would imitate and copy. Dancing to Connect turned that model upside down. In other words, the young people themselves became the creators. And at the end of the program, they had something that belonged to them. We gave them the basic rudimentary tools of choreography. The same thing could have been done in theater. And they created their own script, they created their own choreography. They then performed on a big stage. Many of these young people had never been on a stage before. When they came to the theater, in many cases, it was in a part of town they'd never been to before. So how can you build a lifetime of knowledge and experience and relationship with the performing arts in 20 hours? If you thought about it, if we thought about it, if we gave it a lot of thought and evaluated and microscopically took it apart, we probably would have stopped, because we would have thought this is impossible, it won't add up to anything. Well, let me just say that my dancers are teaching artists as well as performers. They're beautiful performers, they're incredible, they're creative, they're remarkable. But they're also remarkable communicators and leaders in a workshop situation. So I set this in motion and stood back, and they took over with their groups of young people, 20 to 25 young people in 5 different parts of the city, whether it was Phnom Penh or Freiburg, Germany, or New York City. In 20 hours, remarkable work was created. This told me the dance, we have to take dance out of this sort of hothouse experience of the black box theater where 100 people can experience it, and probably those 100 people are people who already have been to many, many, many performances before. We have to open up the world of the arts, and maybe this is why that poll in the newspaper in India degraded the importance of the arts. Maybe it's not clear to society at large the role that artists play in transformative experiences for young people. Imagine if you can unlock creativity among young people. Young people were creating their own theater pieces, their own dances, their own music. If you learn to communicate, to share, and to trust. This has been maybe my most important life lesson. You know, Battery Dance was something that I started, but Battery Dance would have lived for maybe a year, 2 or 3 maximum. I haven't been able to bring people together around this idea, around this notion, around this vision of seeking for artistic beauty, resonance, meaning, and at the same time engaging with society as a whole. The model of arts organizations here in the United States is as nonprofit, tax-exempt corporations. So we are able to receive contributions by individuals, by companies, by the government, that for the individuals it's tax deductible. So there's a benefit to them financially to give to arts organizations. When they give to an arts organization, when somebody donates $10, $25, or whatever they're capable of donating, they become a partner in this enterprise. They become part of the energy. They propel the organization forward. Why do they do this if the arts are so unimportant? Why would they be compelled to support the arts in addition to whatever they're doing for hospitals, for schools, for research? I mean, right now the world is focused on research to try to find a vaccine, and Godspeed to all of the scientists and doctors and medical people, pharmaceuticals that are working on this problem, because all of us are waiting with desperation in some cases to see when life can resume. Here in New York, we have something called 4 phases of returning to normalcy, quote unquote, whatever that normalcy will be. And the performing arts, rehearsing and performing, are in phase 4. We're just starting phase 2 on Monday here in New York City of the reopening. But phase 4 doesn't happen until the end of July at the earliest. And so we don't know whether people will be able to gather in a theater even in this calendar year. It's frightening, it's devastating. So this kind of vehicle of communication, Coconut Theater, Chai Wai, Rangmanch, is something that is a stopgap, but it's also something creative. It's something that would not have existed had it not been forced to exist. Same with Battery Dance TV. I can imagine that it would have taken months and months of planning to create what we've created. Over 400 programs since March 27th, and various offspring, like our new mindful movement for healthcare workers, which is something that we initiated in the month of May. Yesterday we had 35 people, medical people, service workers from hospitals joining and taking 15 minutes away from their incredibly stressful work in the hospital to just find themselves through a core movement. This is something that we can offer. It's something we never would have thought of offering had it not been for this crisis. So what will happen in the future, we cannot tell. But I know that we won't return to a very constricted life after this, because once we've tasted the importance of these kind of international communications, it's something that will continue and will become richer with time. I don't say that they will replace the live experience. Of course, that's impossible. But they will supplement it. I remember years ago, there was something that happened on public television in the United States. It was called Dance in America. For the first time, dance companies were featured on mainstream television in beautiful, beautiful 3-camera, elaborate production teams working on very, very beautiful presentation of dance on screen. A lot of the dance companies said, I don't want to put our work out on television, then nobody will come to the theater to see it. Well, of course, the opposite was true. This was a way of reaching a much larger audience that then was willing to and had the impetus to go to the theater maybe for the first time. So I'm hoping that audiences will expand because of the fact that there are dance classes, there are theater workshops, there are performances of all kinds online now. Well, actually, Vijay, I had been to India for 3 months on a Fulbright program. This is a scholarship program that the United States government has that allows people to travel and to live in other countries and to work in some kind of framework. Mine was at the MS University in Baroda, at the NCPA in Mumbai, and at Kadam and Darpana in Ahmedabad. And when I was in India for 3 months and saw remarkable performances and met so many artists, I was so inspired. And I thought to myself, these people are not coming to New York. These people, if they are coming to the US, they're performing in very small places in the suburbs where they're not getting the mainstream attention that they deserve. So I called up the Indian Consul General, Harsh Hasin, in New York at the time, and I said, the Latin American community, the African American community, the Chinese American community, they all have their own arts council. Why does India not have an arts council? And he said, well, that's a very good point. Let's explore that. So he opened the doors of the consulate for me and a group of people to come in and have a panel discussion. And I brought in people who were experts in arts management, people who were experts in arts council operations, and out of that came the Indo-American Arts Council. It would not have been possible without Arun Shivdasani. Arun Shivdasani gave her life to the creation of programs under the auspices of the Indo-American Arts Council, and many people from the Indo-American community and the government here, the city, the state, the federal government, they all began to understand how important this was to represent India and Indian culture in New York in particular. And then there were tentacles and satellites that happened in other parts of the United States. So it was a drop into the lake, and the ripples were all created by Arun and the board of directors and the people who gravitated to the Indo-American Arts Council. I don't take credit for that. Broadcasting system, television and film about the arts. Well, as theater, you benefit from film, of course, because there's so much theatrical work on film. So you can differentiate between the live experience and the filmed experience, but there is a mesh, and these vehicles support each other. What's the unique feature of Indian classical dance which could possibly be incorporated in Western contemporary dance? Thank you, Payal. Indian classical dance, there are 8 recognized classical dance forms, of course, and hundreds of folk dance forms. India has understood the power of communication through the body for millennia. And I think we can all learn from India and its Indian dance forms. For me, one of the most unique aspects of Indian arts is the fact that they're all considered one part of human expression. The Natya Shastra makes it clear that music and dance are one form of human communication. They're not separated. And I think that this is something that we all can learn from. I don't know any Indian dancer who isn't also a musician. It's fascinating to see a Kathak dancer and a tabla player interacting, where you see this remarkable mathematical mind put to use in footwork, in tabla playing. I know that all of you are aware of this incredible meshing of human capacity that's evident in the Indian classical arts. It's incredible. I think that's something we all have to be thinking about right now is collaboration. We can't do it on our own, and right now we're facing unprecedented challenges. The finances, many arts organizations, I'm afraid to say, might not make it. Because if this goes on for 6 months, 9 months, another year, then the opportunity to perform will, and to earn for many will dry up. And so I just hope people have the resilience and the capacity and the creativity to think about, what can I do now? How can I preserve this essential thing that I'm doing, that I'm passionate about, that I put my life at risk in order to do? From all art-loving people can become stronger during this time. We're feeling shredded, I know. We're feeling deprived. We're feeling suffocated by the fact that we cannot communicate in a normal way right now. At the same time, what can we gain from this? I think we all have to be finding solutions that we seem insoluble right now. But at the same time, here we are. This would not have happened in any other time, this kind of speaking to each other this way. Which of your most liked Indian theater plays, Vinay? Which of my most liked theater plays? I can say that I have been following the literature of India, and when works are transformed into film is when I've had more access to Indian theater. So, for example, Namesake, or Monsoon Wedding, or these literary works that have been transformed and put on film. Because I'm not in India most of the time, this is where I get my dose of Indian theater, when it's on film. So, maybe in the future, if I can come and live in India for a longer period of time, then I'll have more of that to reflect on. But I also should say, I'm a huge fan of Rabindranath Tagore. His poetry, his plays, his philosophy, his creation of Shantiniketan. I'm in awe of Tagore and what he did for all of the art forms. And I myself was inspired and created a production in 1995, Songs of Tagore. Actually, I have to say that my life as a choreographer has pretty much ended. But at the same time, my life as an entrepreneur, my life as an artistic director is flourishing. So I'm not taking up new productions right now. I think that period of creation is over for me. I've turned over that part of my life and that part of my work to younger people. It's time for them to take the mantle and take up that charge, because there's certain things that are right for you organically at a certain stage in your life. And I think if you hold on to something that was right for you at age 30 or 25 or 40, and you're approaching 70, I think maybe you need to get the message, give to the young. So I'm actually not planning new productions right now. Somebody who's inspired me with his dedication to lighting, creativity on stage in Kolkata and other places. I mean, what would the dance world do without you, Dinesh? We're so grateful to the fact that you've illuminated so many beautiful productions. So thank you for being with me on my birthday. Who is your favorite Western composer in Western musicals? Well, I had a daughter who's passionate about Andrew Lloyd Webber. So I've heard more Andrew Lloyd Webber than I can possibly imagine. Through her, I think it's really interesting when your children introduce you to music, or introduce you to theater, or introduce you to anything that they discover. You see it through your different eyes, and it's an enriching experience, and it's sort of multi-generational experience. Like, this shows that Bangladesh and India and Sri Lanka, oh my gosh, South Asia is such an inspiring region of the world. And I think we all can pay more attention to the arts in South Asia. There's never enough, one is never knowledgeable enough about all of the art forms in that region of the world, a region where so many of you are located. Share something about Dancing to Connect. I want to share the fact that, tell you a little bit more detail about the program in Cambodia. Now, if you know anything about the history of Cambodia, you know that that country went through incredible trauma and tragedy when artists were either sent to the rice paddies or murdered by the Khmer Rouge. And when we went to Cambodia in 2006, there was just the beginning of a resurgence of the arts. The people who had survived that terrible purge of art. And we're then teaching young people dance and music and theater traditions, passing along what they could through oral history, through elder to younger. We had the incredible experience of working with young dancers. Now, aware that in the world at large, people were doing contemporary themes. So they wanted to explore contemporary movement, meaning partnering. This is something that is really not explored very much in the classical dance forms, or if at all. So we did this 20-hour workshop with them, and they created a piece, and the King of Cambodia came back from Paris to watch their performance. It was a life-changing experience, and fast forward, the contemporary dance world in Cambodia is thriving. Some incredible works have been created from those early days of experimentation. Similarly, from me, when I was in Germany, and young people created works that were inspired by their exploration of the history of the 20th century and the tragic history of the Nazi period in Germany. This was 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds touching on the history of their country in a way, in the visceral experience, the physical experience of touching history, reclaiming history. And I'm telling you, it was one of the most moving things that I've ever experienced. I remember going into these studios and seeing work emerging by these young people, mentored by my dancers, my teaching artists. And I had to leave the room because I was so emotionally affected by this. I realized I had to sort of recalibrate everything that I thought about choreography and creation in dance and in the arts. I thought you had to be trained before you could experiment and create. Well, I realized how wrong I was. And so from 2006 to the present time, in a way, I'm reborn in terms of my beliefs about creativity. And thank you.